Ladies and gentlemen of the frontier, welcome back to our, well, I should say just welcome to our second episode of PONDER. We made it past the first episode. That's pretty cool. You guys gave us some pretty great feedback. Before Rob and I get rocking and rolling on this week's episode, I did want to address some of that feedback. I wanted to make it a little bit more clear as to what PONDER is. It is a commentary, discussion-focused podcast-style show. So I applaud you to take this video, to put it in your pocket somewhere, to just listen to it while you're at work, maybe while you're playing some Titanfall 2, and to make sure that you know, moving into the future, that there will be no video footage ever added to this show. These tend to be 30 to 40 minutes long. Not only would that be an excessive waste of valuable footage to be used at other points in time, but that would make the render time probably around 3 hours, and the upload time probably around that as well. It's just not really a feasible thing to do. Again, the real value from this comes from the discussion itself, so my apologies if that's something you'd really like, but as I said, try and put this in your pocket somewhere. Maybe you're out jogging, you're working out at the gym, you're at work, and just listen to it. Use it as a bit of background noise for your daily activities. Let's go ahead and move forward, though, because Rob and I are going to talk a lot today about the map design in Titanfall 2.
We are. We've got a lot to talk about, man.
This is one we can hit from today. It's like 360 degrees, man. We can hit it from every angle. I think there's something to talk about here.
Definitely.
Lots of room to draw comparisons to Titanfall 1, obviously, which this worked out like so perfectly because I was, playing a bit of Titanfall 1 over the weekend, and I was like, man, this is like there's so much to say. Just kind of looking back at the first game and seeing what they did the second time around.
I don't even think I have access to the first game anymore. I bought it and I played it for maybe a month, but I don't think it's even on my Origin account anymore. I think it's just disappeared somehow because I wanted to play it a little bit before Titanfall 2 came out, but it was just gone. So, I haven't touched it since a month after release.
Oh, damn, man. So, yeah, that's a big gap. It's only been 3 years, actually, though, Like, that's the crazy thing.
That's a long time, though.
It is a long time, but I thought it was longer. People are saying it's like the 3-year anniversary of the original Titanfall, and I'm like, 3 years? I'm like, man, I thought it was at least like five or six.
I think it's because the gaming industry has been moving pretty quickly in recent years. I feel like just everything is being pushed forward really fast. I mean, when did the Xbox One come out? And there are talks of the new one coming out after, what is it, like Project
Scorpio?
Scorpio or whatever. I was thinking like Project Roach or something. I don't know. But everything just seems like it's moving pretty fast with gaming. I mean, how many games have come out in the last 3 years?
Yeah, it's interesting too because I still think like the 2-year thing. I still think that's a bad like development speed. I mean, obviously you can't sit on game for 10 years and work on it because that always tends to turn out bad. But like, I just feel like 2 years. That was, I guess, the big thing that surprised me when they first announced Titanfall 2 was that it'd only been like a 2-year development cycle, and I was like, that's not a lot of time in reality to make like all of this and then to really test it and play out with it. But I mean, it's not like games haven't been successful in a 2-year launch window. I guess that just kind of always took me by surprise.
Yeah, I feel like it has more to do with the fact that they already had a really strong foundation, because I think Titanfall 2 it's really just a polished up version of what they already had. It's kind of like there's snowplows outside, but it's kind of like Mass Effect 1 transitioning to Mass Effect 2. They had the same engine and the same foundation. They just had to shine up the rough edges. So I feel like 2 years is a decent amount of time for them to really get in and focus up and make the changes that they needed to make. And in the end, it turned out pretty good because Titanfall 2 was, it was successful, I think.
Yeah, I'd say at this point, it's definitely been more successful. I mean, I don't really remember what the numbers were like back for Titanfall 1, but, I feel like there's more people playing the game now. And like you said, no one was really expecting, like a sequel that was going to change everything. This isn't like going from The Witcher 1 to The Witcher 2, for the most part, or The Witcher 2 to The Witcher 3 for that matter. People were really just expecting them to like, okay, what's the next thing in line? Like you said, a bit more of the same, just more well polished.
Yeah. But the interesting thing for me with Titanfall 1 versus 2 is that there were some things lost in the translation. There were some things that I missed from the original game that there wasn't much of a reason for them to go away. Like, do you have any experiences like that with the original versus the sequel?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's like I mean, well, you just look at the things they added down the line with Titanfall 1, like not even talking about more content, like more maps, and the modes that were added, but like number one, the rank chip was a really clever idea.
Right.
I think to this day, it was just a nice thing for people to kind of compete with themselves, to say, oh, okay, this is how I performed this match, so on and so forth. And then all the like weekly and daily challenges that they added, for
right.
Like, regenerating and stuff. Like those were just really smart ideas. Like you should have, patted yourself on the back for that and said, that's the first thing that's going to go into Titanfall 2. But they seem to have they worked so much on polish with Titanfall 2, it feels like sometimes. And then the redesigning of the Titans themselves, which I imagine was a lot of work, and as we know, they're still not like perfectly balanced, to like say, hey, here's 6 brand new like Titan chassis, essentially, some with some old elements here and there. I just would have liked to see those small details, like the way they did customization towards the end of the game with the voices, but more specifically, just the challenge stuff, the challenge stuff and the rank chip. Those are two things. It's like you worked so hard to put them in the game. The first time around, why weren't they there day one from launch? And I know not everything can make its way to the second game, but I think those are two things that just why not?
Those two things I think could have made it in. And it's like and then there's the other things though, like the first person executions. That was one of the hottest topics coming into Titanfall 2 at the start. A lot of people hated the transition to third person, but I was of the school that it doesn't matter, and B, third person still looks cool. So it's a really a mixed bag with it for me.
Yeah, it's a super. I think most of the things that people talk about when we jump from 1 to 2 are purely, preference, like personal taste. But a lot of it, there's a good chunk of it that isn't. Like I said, with the rank chip and the challenges. Obviously, some people don't care about that stuff, but there's a portion of the community that's like, yeah, we would really like that. And for the rest of us, it doesn't harm it not being there,
Yeah, exactly.
It would have been fine for it to be there. So I guess that leads us into the map discussion stuff. I think
that segue, man.
Yes. That was... You made a good point, Rob, when you mentioned, the idea of aesthetics versus playability, like functionality, of the maps themselves. And I think Titanfall 1 was a game that primarily focused on the functionality. Like, don't get me wrong, the maps looked good. There was some really great, like, skybox design, but they pretty much put wall run surfaces on anything they could in the first game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, just unabashedly, just like, here's this big flat panel, and we screwed it to the side of this concrete wall because we want to make it very clear where you can wall run and where you can't. And Titanfall 2 doesn't really follow that same vibe, at least not across all of its maps.
That's 100% true. The way I thought about it, and I was actually pretty upset when they said the new map is what is it? I can't remember.
Colony.
Yeah, Colony. Because the thing with Colony is the dirty version of Angel City, and I would have liked it so much better if they remastered one of the maps that were functionally different from Angel City. And that was a big problem I had with Titanfall 1, was that every single map, for the most part at launch, was functionally the same. Everything had those flat wall running surfaces. They're all just dirty versions of Angel City with different textured walls for the most part.
Yeah, they kept it pretty simple. Like, so there was a few unique ones in there, like Smuggler's Cove and like Lagoon were pretty different.
Favorite maps.
Yeah.
Those were my favorite 2 maps.
Those ones definitely tossed it up quite a bit. I have to say, though, I guess a part of me liked, the fact that they kept it so, like, just bare bones functional. There were certain maps that I really liked because of that. But, there are also maps where I think you could have made like both of those things work. I think Eden's a great example of that. Like, Eden is a very functional map, but it also just, there's something about that 3-lane setup that is like, it's deceptive because it doesn't feel like it's 3 lanes, number one, to start, because of all those little intertwinings and stuff. But it's so traditional, it's so clean, so it has that functionality, but it has a lot of just like extra little features that I think makes it really cool.
Yeah, and more on that, because the thing with the maps in Titanfall 2, and I think the developers did a great job with the maps for their sequel, is that they have the right balance of functional and fuck, I lost my train of thought. I'm cursing a lot today, by the way. I apologize for that. They have a good balance of functionality and aesthetic, and they also have a different feel to each of the maps, which I think was another problem with Titanfall 1, was that, like you said, you had a lot of maps that you enjoyed, but you enjoy them all kind of for the same reason. You enjoy Angel City for more or less the same reason you enjoy Colony, and to a certain extent, that's the same reason you like Smuggler's Cove. They all have that same kind of feel to it, but Boomtown feels significantly different from Angel City. Blackwater Canal is significantly different from Eden in terms of the look and the way the maps actually play out.
Yeah, I think they were really smart too with like the vertical elements of the maps, like across the entire map. I'm not just talking about like rooftops, but like you said, you look at Boomtown and it has like its upper layer, it has its lower layer with the sort of trench that runs across the center of the map, and then you have the rooftops themselves. And that's something they tried to do on like almost all of the maps. Well, not all the maps, but they tried to do it on a handful of maps. And then there's another handful of the maps where they didn't do that at all. Like Eden is very, one tier for the ground floor, and then you have like the second floor, which is the railway station and the rooftops. Whereas then you go back to, say, something like Blackwater Canal again. Again, that's sort of like 3 tiered. So you've got rooftops plus the ground floor, plus you have like the trenches, So there was I think there's a bit more diversity in just the overall complexity of some of the maps, as you jump from one to the other. And I think the biggest thing, though, is probably just the visual design, like you mentioned, that I really think makes them pop, because the first game is very gray. Just across the board gray, and I know a lot of people like that. It feels very like utilitarian, like it's Star Wars episode.
It's very
4, 5, and 6.
It's very gritty.
Yeah, whereas Titanfall 2, they weren't afraid to be like, no, we're going to like some crazy planets and we want color in the game. So like Exoplanet, it's got these wonderful purples and like magentas and pinks thrown in there. It just feels more alive. And like you said, that gives a nice contrast as you go back to something like Boomtown or Homesteader or, Dry Dock. They all feel like they're their own unique location somewhere in the world. Whereas Titanfall 1, there's a few, like you and I mentioned, Lagoon and like Smuggler's Cove, they feel colorful to some extent. But for the most part, it's a whole lot of gray.
Yeah.
It's a whole lot of gray, which was probably just, that was the thing, 3 years ago, you think about it. And when you talked about sci-fi, number one, there wasn't a lot of sci-fi games really out apart from like Mass Effect, and even Mass Effect, it was just like the color palette. I don't know what it was.
It was, I mean, there was a point in time where everything was trying to be gritty. It was around the time The Dark Knight was starting to come out. Everything was trying to be dark and edgy. It's like Batman's not running around in tights anymore, so everything has to be, on that same note.
Yeah, so somebody actually mentioned, when I talked a little bit about the like visual design of the game yesterday. Someone mentioned and thought that it was kind of like generic, colorful sci-fi, but I don't think that's generic at all. I think when we look at old like art, sci-fi art that you would see on books like the stuff written by like Isaac Clarke and Isaac Asimov, I should say, those artists did these really colorful, exotic like 1950s, 1920s sci-fi art, because that's kind of what they envisioned. Like if we're going to another planet, like why not just unleash our imagination? It's not going to look like Earth. Let's just make it excessively in colorful flora and have weird creatures. And I think Titanfall 2 embraces that, and I like that route quite a bit, actually.
Yeah, and they don't go overboard with it. It's not a kind of cyberpunk.
It's not like No Man's Sky, or like cyberpunk.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's not just this excessively saturated color palette everywhere. I think, like I said, I think there's a nice blend. And some of it does look utilitarian while still looking, in my opinion, clean. I think Dry Dock's one that people often overlook. Like a lot of people say the game's too sterile. But if you look at Dry Dock, man, there's like burnt edges on everything. It's grimy. There's like
Dry Dock is nasty.
Mud down in the trenches. It just looks like it would smell like nasty, stinky, stagnant water. He flies everywhere. You don't really get that in the multiplayer because you're blasting around. But if you really stop and look at the map, it does. It seems really, really gnarly.
Yeah. But I guess to segue again, or to attempt to segue, what do you feel about Crash Site? Because that's one of the maps where it's following the trend of being significantly different, having a different feel and play style. But I'm pretty sure everyone hates it. I don't even want to say most people. I think everybody hates Crash Site. How do you feel about it?
I think the biggest problem with Crash Site's the one map that I think highlights maybe some of the issues that end up coming up when you step away from the like slap wall run things everywhere approach, which is it's very difficult for the average player to traverse the map quickly apart from being on foot. Like there's all these tight little back wall corridors, some of which you can wall run on, some of which are nearly impossible to wall run on. The one that starts on bottom spawn, if you break out to the left and you use that little small like the little small passageway, unless you can slide hop, you're not making it through there like clean. Even if you can slide hop, you have to be really, really good at it, Yeah. And there is a wall run route, but the gaps between some of the wall runs on that map are so massive that if you don't stim at the perfect time or build momentum, you end up back on the ground again, which means that flanking the entire map is very difficult, while it's easier on some maps. So I feel like it's the one map that doesn't really give players a consistently viable option to wall run, and that's a bad thing for me, because I think being able to get on the walls as much as you want that's like Titanfall's thing. That's the one thing that Titanfall 1 did, I think, very well across its maps. It may have sacrificed the overall, aesthetic of the maps for it, but it meant that I could always go from one wall to the next. And I know that that's a sacrifice they had to make, right? Like if we're going to try and do something different, something's going to have to give. And I think Crash Site is just a good example of that. They tried to just give us something entirely different. It's not 3-lane. It's this weird, like circular. It's such an interesting map from a design perspective, actually, because it's basically like they took a circle and then they're like, oh, we'll have like a back street over there, and maybe we'll have like a street connecting this circle here. Like they were playing City Skylines and they just didn't know how the hell they were going to make this roundabout, the city center, and they just went all crazy and crooked with it.
I feel like they almost made Crash Site specifically to make their multiplayer pilots trailer, because if you remember that trailer, they started off with that really cool song, and the pilot, he's running through and then he uses hover and he gets a kill and he boosts onto the wall and he's doing all sorts of crazy stuff. But the maneuvers that the pilot did in the multiplayer pilots trailer, no one ever does them, because he was using a route that is completely impractical, that almost never gets used in the actual game.
That's a common thing, right? It's no fault to Respawn, right? As a creator of anything, you're going to have a vision for your creation, right? You're going to say, oh, this is how people are going to play the game because this is how we play the game. But you can't, I think we talked a little bit about this, you can't expect that at all. You have to throw that completely out the window. Like, Respawn thinks that we're all going to use hover and hollow pilot because it looks cool.
I like hover, by the way.
In a trailer.
Continue.
But, it's cool, but no one really touches it, right? Like, there's so many things in the game that end up being really not viable. It's like they're fun. They're fun, but why would you ever use that over something else if you were trying to just have the best possible match, Again, not that they're not usable. Like, you can use Hollow Pilot and have fun with it, but it's like you said, it's just, it's probably not going to frequently work out in your favor like it does in those trailers, And it's the same thing, I think, when it comes, again, to the showcasing of the map design and how they expected people to play the game. I mean, the reality is that's how Respawn maybe envisions their game, but then you give it to tens of thousands of players and we're all going to see it completely differently, because that's just human nature. We didn't spend 3 years making the game.
Exactly.
We didn't see it come from, the bottom up. We just hopped in and we're like, oh, this is how I'm going to do it.
So I think Crash Site is the only map that just missed the mark completely, because overall there's not anything that I hate about Titanfall 2's maps. I'm not the biggest fan of Complex, because it sort of kind of caters to long range, but it's also kind of not. So I never really know which weapon that I should be using in that map. But for the most part, though, I don't have any problems with the maps in Titanfall 2. I think Titanfall 2 is a good example of when you get a good balance of the maps being competitively viable, but also enjoyable to play, and enjoyable to play 300 hours down the line. Because that's one thing, because I have 300 hours in the game, but I never got tired of playing on any of the maps. It was never like, it all feels the same. No, when I go on Blackwater Canal, I break out the DMR or the double take. When I go to Eden, I go to an SMG or an assault rifle. There's always that different feel to every single map. So I think they did a good job. Except for Crash Site.
Except for Crash Site. Yeah. I agree. I think most of the problems actually that people end up having with the maps themselves just come from the player pool. Like Crash Site would be a lot better if people just realized that they should flank at the start of the map. I also, you still have to knock the design for that. I think there's very small things that could be done to Crash Site's design that could completely change it. Like number one, just making some of those like backdoor passageways they made a little bit more accessible to run through, putting more flat surfaces on certain areas of the map so players have a better idea of where they can wall run. I'm not even saying they don't have to put those giant steel walls up, but just carve out some of the map a little bit more. There's a little bit too many nooks and crannies, things you can get stuck on.
Yeah. Just get out a grinder, smooth out some of those rocks too, because
not everybody.
Ridiculous.
Again, we have to recognize that maybe 10% of the community knows how to slide hop. The rest of people are just the wall running. They're either wall running or they're sprinting on the ground. So if you're not giving them clear wall run routes, well, then they're gonna look at that flank and they're gonna be like, by the time I get around the other side, they're gonna have killed my entire team and just pushed here anyways,
Yeah.
That happens for me. Even if I'm on my best day and I manage to get all the way around Crash Site in like maybe 10 seconds, usually my team is all dead anyways, and either the other team is finally pushed, or maybe I get lucky and the team is staying there waiting to slaughter my team again, and then I might get a flank here and there. That's if I don't get killed by some guy with a cloak somewhere. It's like, so I guess the best thing, if we all want to save ourselves from really being pissed with Crash Site, just stop rushing the middle lane right at the start of the match.
Yeah, just go left.
Just go left. Just go left or go right, and just either flank to the middle or flank behind, and all our problems will be solved.
Yeah, that's the best way to say it.
Until we respawn again, and then we're all back bottom and top, and then it just keeps going, man.
Yeah, it's a nightmare.
It is a brutal map for that. It is one of the maps that demonstrates the excessive range capability of the Devotion better than any other map, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I don't care about the Devotion that much. Like, it's enough is how I feel about the Devotion. Enough is enough. We get it. It's really strong. But honestly, every gun in Titanfall will kill you in less than a second.
No, yeah, you do have obviously kill time. That's what I talked about that like the start of the game when it first came out. It was like, the reality is time to kill in Titanfall 2 is really short. So for the most part, it's not excessively frustrating.
It's just
I'm still
it's
just
too much.
I'm still just happy that people aren't using the G2 because they still haven't really figured that out. I get matches here and there where people know that it's really good, but for the most part, people are still caught up with their Devotion and the Hemlock, and I'm like, that's good. Just stay with those two.
Yeah, but they're really not that. They're annoying. I think it's just at this point, it's just a meme. And whenever somebody gets killed by the Devotion, they just have to say the meme, oh my God, when are they going to nerf it? And it's just enough, guys. It's strong, but so is the flatline, so is the R201, so is the alternator. The alternator kills in 2 shots when it's amped, and everybody knows you can just tap the trigger and basically snipe people with it. It's all ridiculous to a certain degree. But I that's another thing, though, going back to Titanfall 1 that I do miss from that game, is that they did have some customization options that were more enjoyable, because I don't like the fact that you can't have an ACOG sight on the assault rifles, because I hate the HCOG Ranger to a certain degree, and I don't like the standard HCOG, so I use a lot of my guns without a sight at all, because I just don't like the way they look. But I feel like they had a better grip on the gun customization in Titanfall 1, and I wish they brought over some of the attachments and things.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it was a weird decision to just do like these, I don't know, is there like more like perks just kind of that you attach to the weapon rather than giving us like a full list of attachments themselves? And I think there's more customization value in giving players like, a slew of optics and other ways to modify the weapon. I mean, not only does that add a nice layer of variety, but it means that the weapons can kind of be tuned for different playstyles and different environments. Whereas, like you said, you kind of just throw this on that, and I don't know. It's weird, right? Because I feel like maybe I feel like they handled recoil a little bit differently in the first game, whereas like it actually, you needed to have like that long range optic, if you wanted to engage at long range. Whereas like now like you said, even though I don't personally like the Ranger either, like just the way it kind of, I don't know, I just don't like visually the way it's represented. Like,
It's ugly on most of the guns, honestly.
and I personally like struggle with it. I don't know what it is, but there's something about its design that makes it difficult for me. So I almost always use the regular HCOG because it just works better for me.
Yeah.
But it's like, you know, the range that like all the weapons have doesn't seem to be affected, I guess, enough by the lack of like a long range optic. You know, I guess I'd like to be able to pick up the R2 and know, like, okay, I'm not going to be able to shoot as far as the guy with the AOG because it's just going to be too hard to compensate for recoil. But that's just not really the way they handle things in the second game.
It's weird. It's weird. They have this weird gray area because the guns all feel significantly different, but the handling is not particularly difficult with anything. So you can get sniped by an SMG, and you can kind of break the generally accepted rules that, okay, if I have a DMR and I'm across the map, I can do things that somebody with an SMG cannot do, but that's not always true because of the easy to use guns.
That's the issue I've always taken with, you know, like things like the Devotion. Is not that I don't really care about, you know, like, oh, it's a powerful weapon. I don't like that it knocks other weapons out of their respective like meta, you know, where they should be. Like we were talking about with like the DMR and the double take. Those are fun weapons, but why would I use them when I have, you know, the G2 or the Devotion even, you know, that can have pretty much the exact range capability. Fortunately, the Hemlock doesn't really have the range it used to have anymore. I actually played with it yesterday quite a bit, and I was like,
it's kind of sad, but you know.
Yeah. But I think that's where they need to put the assault rifles, right? I think that's one of the issues where the game really struggles, like you mentioned, and there isn't a clear spectrum for where each weapon, you know, works in an engagement distance. I understand there are always going to be lines that are going to be blurred because for the most part the game is relatively close quarters.
Right.
But there are certain weapons, like you said, that just go, they kind of just cross way over that, and that's where it's a tad bit frustrating at times.
Yeah.
But
yeah, go ahead.
But man, I forgot what I was going to say now.
It's okay. But yeah, I mean, that was always something that bothered me about the game. Like you said, I think because I wonder though if they would have tuned the guns a little bit differently, because time to kill was another hot topic that a lot of people either loved or hated, and eventually we all got used to it. But I wonder how different the game would be if the time to kill was tuned a little bit differently. If every gun dealt 50% less damage, how different would Titanfall be? How different would the performance of snipers be? Would a sniper be more viable if all of a sudden an SMG from across the map took like 20 bullets to kill you as opposed to the 3 that it currently is?
Yeah, I think it would have added, I think personally that's like one of the biggest issues that the game does have is like again, there's just not enough diversity among the weapons in terms of their damage output and performance. You know, there are small variations to like how they handle like sensitivity wise, like you pick up the Volt, and you compare that to like the car, the R97, they all kind of pivot differently. They have their own individual sensitivities, but actual damage across the weapons, like you said, is very similar. Whereas in Titanfall 1, it was very different. Like you picked up the G2 in Titanfall 1, and yeah, it killed in like 3 shots, but it had quite a bit of recoil. It was relatively difficult to control, and you couldn't really tap fire it as fast as you could, so you had to really make your shots count. Whereas you then jumped to like the R2, and yeah, you could pour bullets out of the end of the mag for days, but it took almost a full mag to kill someone, especially if you decided to run it with the suppressor. You know, it wasn't...
Yeah. I think it was like 4 to 6 bullets or something. I watched a guide on it a while back. I think it was like 4 to 8 bullets with the suppressor or something like that.
Yeah, now, I mean, the time to kill is so much shorter, and then the thing we have to take into consideration is that because the game is so frantic, you're almost always engaging someone, for the most part, who is already low on health. especially on the small maps.
Yeah.
If you're playing Angel City, chances are that dude's been tagged in one way or another. He's trying to survive. You know, I know the regen system is very fast, but you know, that's how you end up getting. You still get lots of one burst kills with the Hemlock that aren't headshots because you're tagging someone who only needs to be like shot in the foot and they're dead. You know, so yeah, I think that's an interesting area to look at where it's like, you know, a lot could have been done there to make things more relevant maybe, or to make, like you said, to put things in a certain perspective. Because when I played Titanfall 1, one of the first things, like you said, to notice is that you just don't have that same range capability with the SMGs that you do in Titanfall.
Yeah.
Like, you really had to get in close. Now, the R970s and it's just like the ultimate bullet hose in Titanfall 2.
They went overboard with that.
Insane
that joint
range.
is ridiculous now.
Insane, man. I mean, you see people play with it, and you're like, you in your head, you're like, there's no way anybody should be going for that shot, but then you get a kill, and they get a kill, and you're like, nope, yeah, it makes perfect sense to engage.
Oh man, it's a weird kettle of fish that they got going on, but I think this kind of relates to the Titans a little bit too, because they had the Titans with their individual the individual chassis could equip whatever weapon they wanted and whatever kits and whatnot, whereas now we have the specific loadouts. Because one of the things that a lot of people complained about that I noticed in the first one was that there was definitely a meta surrounding which weapons are the best, and that's true for the pilots in both games. You know, you've got the Volt at one point was the best SMG. The R201 is kind of the standard best assault rifle, and the Flatline is it's like but there's always that meta. What's your opinion on the Titans 1 versus 2?
Yeah. It's like, I mean, I think right now the 2 just seems to struggle so much from certain Titans being kind of irrelevant, it's just not really viable when compared to others. You
think so?
Yeah, just a little bit. Like, I know in like a public setting, I can get away with using pretty much anyone for the most part. But it's like when every time I pick any Titan, right? And I get maybe like 2 or 3 kills a match. And then I just know within the next match, if I had just picked Ion or Tone, I know I would have just gotten like 5 or 6 kills. I guess my only real problem is that I just feel like North Star and Scorch are still just like kind of meh. Like they're fun, and I play Scorch all the time. I have good
experiences with them. Most of I don't use Tone that much, and North Star does get countered by Ion 1 versus 1, but I don't usually have bad experiences with them to where they feel underpowered.
I wouldn't say bad, like you could still do well with them. But it's like, it's just knowing that here's the thing, it's just knowing that if you pick Tone or Ion, you're pretty much guaranteed to get twice as many kills as you would have gotten if you picked the other Titans. I know Ronin's pretty good as of late. I think if you can really play Ronin, he's just, super agile, and you can really be that ambush attacker. At the end of the day, I still think you need the support of a good team to play Ronin well, because just having Ronin and having no one to back you up it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how good you are. You can dash across the map all you want. If you're the only one going in there with no support, you're screwed. He's an honest support Titan, which is cool. But like, I don't even touch North Star anymore, man. At least like, it's just Tone is still so populated when I play the game. Like, there's always at least 2 to 3 Tones on the other team. And it's like, yeah, you can tear down the particle wall and stuff like that, but I'm over there with like North Star, like trying to take these charged railgun shots to get these kills. And again, unless I have a good team, it's really hard to play that character supportively. And maybe that's just the point. Maybe that's what they were going for, I
mean, yeah, because I don't have bad experiences, or I do my best when I'm playing North Star. It might be because it's my favorite Titan, but I get the most kills with North Star. I do the best with North Star, and I think the Titan balance, they did a pretty decent job with it. But I think the problem is that the game is kind of at odds with itself, where you do have, we talked about this in the first episode, where you have opportunities for team compositions where if your team is coordinated, North Star can rip buttholes open. If you're working with a Scorch that flanks around back and puts traps behind the enemy, and then Ronin pushes up and then Scorch sets off the traps, then you win. But when it's just kind of everybody's running around doing their own thing, then those Titans that are geared more towards group play don't feel as good, even if they are incredibly powerful.
Yeah, that's the best way to probably put it, man. It's like, the game is at odds with itself, because a part of it wants the Titans to be like Overwatch, where it's like, okay, I understand that Tracer isn't the best individual, blah, 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 because she's more of a harasser, she's more of this. And that's how you can look at Titanfall 2, and people use that as a justification all the time to me, when I say this or that, but I'm like, but that's just, the game still plays more like a Call of Duty, you know, and we talked about this, where when you get into a match with, you're just, it's playing like that. People aren't playing this hefty team composition. No one should be expected to either, because the game never treats it that way. The game never says like, oh, okay, Ronin, support type Titan, great. Like, the thing is, if they would have even just presented the Titans in that manner, then yeah, maybe people would look at it that way, and people would look at their team comp more effectively. They would say at the start of a match, okay, the guy's already playing Tone, we got a Scorch, okay, well, I'll throw in a North Star, maybe we should get like an Ion in here for a little bit more frontline defense and power. But it's just not, people just play whatever the hell they're going to want to play. And again, part of that is no one really being able to know, as we mentioned, what you are playing until it's already in the match,
Yeah.
And even then, you still don't know until Titanfall comes.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's part of why I do so well with North Star, is because I won't call her down until my team has at least 2 Titans down as well.
Well, yeah, playing smart,
Yeah, so they're kind of taking the brunt of the damage, and I'm hovering around doing my thing and, shooting the Titans in their soft spots, and the whole health bar disappears in one shot, and you're like, well, that doesn't feel right. But it works though. It works when it's played with the proper team composition. But I guess going back to the customization though, a lot of people didn't like that the Titans had the fixed loadouts, but I never really cared, because I played Armored Core and Mech Warrior and all those kinds of games back in the day, and those were pure mech games. Like, when you built your mech, you actually picked the legs, the arms, the core, the head, the guns, the fire control system, and all these ridiculously obscure things that, like, who really cares? But it's cool. So I didn't care so much when they said, okay, Scorch can't change his loadout and he can't change his gun. But like, I was watching your other video, and you said you did. Look, I forgot now, but tell me what you said in your other video about the Titans with their customizations and their loadouts.
No, I think it's like you said. Like, I actually liked the idea of a preset like Titans. To me, it's kind of like the hero shooter approach, almost like what Rainbow Six Siege ended up doing. Initially Siege was going to be the same way that the first Titanfall was. They were just going to have like terrorist versus counter-terrorist, and we were going to be able to like customize, and then they were like, no, let's put in like restricted characters and give them their own abilities. I like that, but again, I think the problem is then with the way in which it was executed, like we spoke about. It wasn't delivered in that manner. So a part of me is like, for this type of game, I think just complete player choice makes more sense, because people are playing on such an individual level. I think it would have been important. It would have made more sense to just embrace that. To just say, okay, yeah, this is a game, honestly, where it's, for the most part, people are just playing on their own, and there's going to be all these individual carries, which is exactly how Titanfall 2 carries out, man. When I play the game, there's usually 1 or 2 people at the top of the leaderboards with double digits, and everyone's down there with 1 or 2 digits. So, I don't think they built systems in Titanfall 2 that catered to the type of the game it ended up being. But I still like that decision. Again, I think it's just the way it was executed.
Oh man! Now that when you put it that way, you're really pulling back the curtain right now, and I'm starting to see, because I'm thinking back to so many matches where either I'm the only one with triple digits, or I'm sitting at the bottom with 1 kill, and some guy has 250 points somehow. Like, it's so true.
It's the type of game that Titanfall just, it still is. Again, people draw comparisons to Call of Duty, and I think for the most part they do it wrongfully. A lot of people do it because they just want to they either want to talk crap about one game or the other, right? But when you actually just look at the game's flow, like the way the gameplay, loop sort of works.
Yeah, it's exactly the same.
Yeah, there are both games that, exactly, where one person can easily carry and where one person often easily carries. And that's why when you play with a group of people who all know what they're doing, you absolutely slaughter the other team match after match after match. That's why I stopped playing with like groups of really good players on stream. Like Iniquity used to show up, and we'd have like a couple other guys in there. And it would be like 5,000, 4,000 to like 100 in Bounty Hunt.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you just decimate,
It's dumb. It's very dumb.
Yeah.
That happened to me once in a match of Capture the Flag. It was a full group of Frothy Omens.
The Frontier Force.
Network. Yeah, those guys. And it started out, they got the first flag cap pretty fast, and then I think my team got a couple flag caps. But then the match reached a stalemate, and I was like, wait a minute, these guys are just fucking around, killing people, and not actually doing objectives. This is stupid. And that's what happens when you get a team that is better than the majority of the people that they're fighting against, it just becomes a slaughter fest, and it's ridiculous. I just made a sandwich. I wasn't sitting through that. It's not. It's
no, yeah,
not
I've left matches of bounty hunt and even attrition of the last couple of days where my team is slaughtering the other team. Like, I don't even care if I'm on the winning team. I'm just going to leave because this isn't fun for anyone, you know? That was honestly one of the biggest things that had me stop playing Titanfall 1 was I always played with at least 3 to 4 people when I played Titanfall 1. You know, myself, my brother who's like God tier. Like, he's one of those people who's like Benji. You're like, how can this person be this good at this game? You know, like, or anything they pick up and play randomly. So we used to just go to town and it was like, this isn't, after a while, it's like, okay, this isn't fun anymore, you know? Like, it's time to walk away. I mean, Titanfall 2 is not really at that point, at least not for me, because I just, you know, for the most part, I play by myself. But, you know, again, that's pretty much my thoughts on the whole Titan thing. I like the idea of the custom Titans. I just think execution-wise, it doesn't fit this type of game. Yeah. You know, a big part of me wishes it was, you know, like I said, maybe more restrictive, where you could only have one of each type of Titan. You know, I didn't feel too great about that suggestion when you first made it, but I'm starting to come around to it today because I really want Titanfall 2 to be a much more tactical game than it is, and that's part of the reason why I haven't played it much after the 300th hour. It's still a ton of fun, but I want more tactics from it. I want more deep strategy because it's all there, but it's not there. No, yeah, there's nothing really persuading the average player to like care, right? Yeah. And I think, you know, a lot of people will look at us and they'll say, oh, but I don't want the game to be any more difficult. You know, I like it the way it is as being accessible. But at the end of the day, I think when you build a game that at least tells you, hey, this is how you should focus on things, it just makes it more clear. And at the end of the day, I think a lot of people would actually perform better if they could know that, okay, this person's got this Titan. Okay, so the last slot left open is North Star. Well, you know what? I can do North Star. I'm pretty good at North Star. And then they can just focus on playing that Titan, and they can feel like they're a part of a team rather than sitting there and saying, oh, man, I didn't get 30 kills and I was trashed this match, you know, because everybody just gets caught up in the top of the leaderboard mentality, right? Every person who plays this game, for the most part, wants to do the best that they possibly can with whatever loadout they pick. But I don't think most people are sitting there recognizing the supportive element of a Ronin or a North Star. There are definitely people who do that, and those people probably do really well. But everybody else is just kind of, you know, again, they're playing it like it's just this solo queue game. It's like, well, I'm just going to see how good I can do as North Star. So I'm going to call in my North Star as soon as I can. The match starts. Oh, I got my North Star early. And then you get absolutely annihilated by a bunch of Archer rockets, you know? Yeah. So that forced sense of like, you know, there is some importance or value to team competition and supporting your team, I think would benefit everyone at the end of the day. Yeah. That's why we got to have ranked, man, because Overwatch, they in the quick play, you can have 5 Soldier 76s, but in ranked, you can't double up. And you can't anymore, actually. They made it so it's only in arcade now. Really? Yeah. So quick
when
play.
Did they change that? What?
Yeah, that was.
So
probably,
we can't have like 5 Winstons hopping around acting the fool.
Because my friends and I we all play quick play. We just kind of dove into rank, and dude, we complained about that for months.
It's dumb, but I still like it. Or I liked it now just because it's just kind of silly and
exactly, which is why it makes sense in the arcade, right? They put it in the arcade, and I'm like, you know what, leave it there. If you want to have fun in the arcade, that's great, but you know, why should quick play have to suffer? You know, it's just because like, so no, it's not anymore. Thank goodness, because
oh man, because I guess it is toxic to a certain degree because I've had dumb instances where the enemy team is a group of Mays and they'll wall off the start of a payload match for the entirety of the match and you can't win. But you know, I guess I like creating salt sometimes. I did enjoy.
Yeah, it has its place, you know. And that's funny when you draw that comparison, actually, right? Because that was one of the issues. Say everybody would go Winston, or you'd have all Bastions, and the thing that would get that me frustrated about it was like, you know how you have to win. You simply need to all pick one hero that counters that hero and you'll win, right? Yeah. So it was just kind of this silly game of like rock, paper, scissors, except you tell the person what you're going to draw before you say rock, paper, scissors. Yeah. In Titanfall 2, to some, it not as often, but I think there was a point when Tone really did, like, for whatever reason, Tone psychologically was the only Titan people were picking. So you'd go into LTS and it would be 5 tones, or whatever. So you'd have to say, okay, well, we all have to either pick Ion or we all have to pick Scorch, or we have to do, or not Scorch, I'm sorry, Legion, or you have to make some sort of, we have to do something to hard counter them, and there was a lot of value. Again, a lot of value lost. It's not like that so much anymore. I think all in all, like you said, for the most part, we all get down about balancing, but the portion of the community that's left kind of gets it, and they play what they want to play. But I still think, like we mentioned, there would be value to saying, hey, one of each Titan, or at least giving us the ability.
Or not more than 2. Maybe that would be a little better.
Yeah, just something in terms of restrictions, and maybe down the line there will be more Titans introduced, and it'll be easier for them to say something like that. I don't think they're going to put more. But I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think
they're going to put more Titans. I don't think they're going to add more Titan kits. No. I think they're done with that.
I think at this point we're probably just going to see maps and maybe game modes.
Yeah.
So.
And hopefully I want them to do a new map, just not a remaster, but an actual new one, because I want to see what they got. I want to see if their designers can still muster up the same magic they had with Boomtown, because Boomtown I think is the best map.
Dude, I completely agree, man. I think like the diversity of Boomtown, from the pilots versus the pilot aspect of it to the Titan aspect of it is just so well designed. It's just enough complexity to the map, and it always draws players to the right point, at the right time. Some of the maps,
it does.
You get weird situations. Like that's probably one of the biggest issues with Crash Site is you get those fights that where the other team just camps with their Titans at the back of the map, and then your team has to keep pushing in and you just get slaughtered again and again. And it happens a little bit in Complex too. Complex has those pockets of outside area, where the team can really camp with rifles and things like that, and your team has to try and like push into them and flank. It's like this weird little bastion they form. But Boomtown never seems to have any of those issues. There's always it's just, I don't know, it's a really smart map. It is it's my favorite map without a doubt. It's just super fun. Man, a lot to talk about.
I know it could go on for ages with because there's so much passion involved in talking about a game that you actually enjoy and wanting it to be this perfectly ideal game. Because the fact of the matter is, most of the shit that we're talking about right now is not going to make it into Titanfall 2, most likely. But it's still fun to just imagine that maybe in Titanfall 3 or in another game, in another first-person shooter, there will be these elements. Like I think aren't they making another Quake or something?
Yeah, Quake Champions is coming out.
Yeah, Quake Champions. The hope is that the next first-person shooter that is a brand new IP or a rebirth to an existing one will draw from all of these elements and make something better. Because there's always a predetermined release schedule for games. So Vince Zampala is not going to listen to our podcast and say, hey, Tony and Rob got some great ideas. We need to erase everything. We're gonna do what they said. So,
it's a whole pool of like hard decisions, right? Because like you said, it's like they could go that route and they could focus more on the hero shooter side of things, and then you have to question, okay, well, do they put like a healer in? Do we have like a Titan healer? How far do you take it?
It'd be kind of cool if they had repair drones. Not gonna lie, but
that's when you start to ask yourself, it's like, okay, what type of game do I want Titanfall 2 to be? And I think that's something that the community is at odds with, because I make that, like when I mentioned the idea of the game very much being a Call of Duty style experience for all the right reasons. I mean, look who made the game. They stay true to their classic formula and to the type of game that provides, so I understand that going into the locked in, one Titan per player thing, that starts to take the game in a very different route,
Oh, yeah.
That's a very different world. It's a very different experience. And I get that some people maybe don't want that. I get that Respawn, maybe doesn't want that. So, I'm still having fun. I guess the big thing really is to see they keep talking about like improving the game itself, in their patches, beyond maps and modes. They keep talking about just adding features. So I'm always interested to see how things are going to change. I guess, the big thing I talked about yesterday when I talked a little bit about Titanfall 1 was how they really surprised me anyways with the decisions they did make in Titanfall 1. Because I don't really remember the community screaming for all of those things, and yet Respawn did a lot of them anyways.
Right, right.
You know, they seem to always very much have their own agenda and, you know, their own vision. So I'm interested to see what that vision is beyond like just maps and modes for Titanfall, for the rest of Titanfall 2.
Yeah. You know, that's definitely something to be curious about. Because at this point, they're pretty tight-lipped, so we just all we can do is speculate as to what the future holds.
Speculate, indeed. So, if you guys want to speculate, this is going to be a crazy comment section, man. I can already imagine it.
Oh, yeah, of course. I know everybody hates me for saying the devotion isn't that bad.
We talk about we called Titanfall Call of Duty at least 6 times.
Yeah,
so.
I mean it is, but you know,
it's gonna be bad. But you know, we're two people who like the game, guys. We like playing it, and it's just always interesting to talk about, you know, the direction the game could have went or where it could go. You know, kind of look at the other sides of the coin, because you know, I think the funny thing is, right, is people are constantly asking, why isn't this game more successful? And my completely just candid and honest response is always, it doesn't appeal to the masses like Overwatch does or like other shooters do. You know, it's stuck in that middle ground between a franchise that is dying, which is Call of Duty, that doesn't have the same popularity it once had, even though, by the way, Call of Duty Infinite Warfare sold better than Battlefield 1, as I mentioned before.
Ridiculous, man. It's completely... Yeah, whenever I look at... I watch Drifter sometimes, and whenever I see him playing Infinite Warfare, it just... The game doesn't look good. Like, it bothers me.
I will say it still somehow is fun to play, and I think it's because it still
because it's still Call of Duty.
Yeah, it still maintains
exactly.
It still maintains that core gunplay. The excessive level of customization for your weapons is there. That's like a big draw for people, you know.
Yeah, you know what it is? I'll tell you what it is. At this point, Call of Duty Infinite Warfare looks like a street hooker. And that's what turns me off about it, because it looks like this thing that is clearly trying to get your money, and it'll fuck you till it gets it, and that's it. It just bothers me whenever I see it.
Yeah, it's.
I was like, that was kind of graphic. You might have to bleep that or something.
Yeah, I think most people will get the reference we get. Hopefully, no one's asking their parents what you meant by that. It should be all right. Most people of that age probably didn't make it to the 51-minute mark, so I think we're all right.
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
So yeah, you know, that's just me at the end of the day. It's like, I don't think Titanfall 2, I don't think there's anything Respawn can do at this point to make this game like have a larger community. It just doesn't appeal to the masses. It does a lot of things that, yeah, it's just the way it is, you know. I'm not bashing the game. I still have a lot of fun with it. But as you can hear from what both Rob and I have said during this, you know, we have our fair share of issues with its multiplayer long term. You know, somehow things were handled. So feel free to share all your thoughts. I'm sure there'll be many. I'm interested in reading what everybody has to say. I mean, honestly, everybody's going to have a different opinion on this. So, you know, just keep it clean. We're having fun here at the end of the day. This is what you do when a game hits its like 5 or 6 month mark, is you start to speculate. Yeah. You start to talk about the what ifs and ands, because it's fun. It's as simple as that. When you do something for this long, you ask those questions, and sometimes the results are good. Sometimes, you know, someone somewhere, maybe at Respawn, does actually look at what we're saying and say, yeah, that kind of, you know, sparks my interest a little bit, you know, in the way that they were talking about that, and who knows. But if not, it was 50 minutes of fun. So
yeah,
hopefully you guys enjoyed it. We're going to be back once again 2 weeks from now, so the Tuesday after next, with our 3rd episode. Hope you guys are having fun. You know, if you're really wanting to draw some comparisons for yourself, the best thing you can do is boot up Titanfall 1 and just have fun with it and see what you come away with.
Yeah, it only costs like, what, $10 now?
Yeah, I think if you have Origin access, which is like $5 a month, you get it for like free with all the DLC. So,
oh, that's a good deal.
So you can do that if you're on PC, which Origin access also gives you like all those play free trials. You get like 10 hours of Mass Effect Andromeda this Thursday. I mean,
what?
It's a pretty good deal right now.
About to subscribe to that right now.
Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we will see you in the next one.
Boom.